I noticed the weight of his hand first. The way his palm settles on my skin. It really doesn't matter where. My belly, the inside of my arm, the curve of my hip. The heat feels like it wakes me up on the inside. My breath forgets where it was. The racket in my head stops racketing. From the outside, it's just a hand on a body, but it's more than that. And it's not even sexual. But on the inside, my cells are like firing and wiring, and my muscles loosen and start negotiating with gravity. And the spaces between my ribs like open. It's a simple thing, it's just touch, but somehow it calls me back from wherever I've wandered. Warm fingers on skin, and suddenly I remember I live here. Touch has a way of rearranging us in that way. Sometimes it invites us into more of ourselves, but sometimes into less. Hey, lovers. This is Sex in Real Life. Honest conversations about sex and relationships beyond 40. I'm your host, Stacey Herrera. Sometimes touch is more access than invitation. And as a woman, I have had fingers on my belly that did not ask, palms on my thighs that just assumed that they would spread. And I'm not talking about with strangers, not even with villains. And it wasn't even that the contact was rough or mean. It wasn't even exactly unexpected. They'd reach for my body the way someone reaches for a light switch in their own hallway. It's thoughtless, and there's this assumption that it's going to turn on. I was younger back then, and if I'm honest, I made room for that kind of touch because I learned how to lean back just enough to accommodate something that I didn't necessarily want. And I can still remember like how my muscles would kind of tighten, not soften, but tighten, and how my body feels like it was responding from memory. That was how I learned the difference between being wanted and being available. Of course, I didn't have language for it yet. Back then, a hand on my lower back felt like a claim, like stand here, right here with me. Later, later, that same gesture made me feel like I was being steered. So not may I, but of course I can. That's what it felt like the other person was saying. Same spot, same pressure. Just felt like it was remixed into something else, like a question that turned into a given. And it was still my body. It wasn't on loan in a way that made me feel bad per se, but it didn't make me feel good either. Being touched in ways that should arouse can feel hollow. My body sometimes felt like it was saying yes, or at least that's what I thought, but most of the time, my body couldn't really get with the program. Part of me just could not accept it. Time and more experiences than I can count would later teach me that sometimes, and I've said this a gazillion times, but sometimes the body is just responding to stimulation, which is not the same thing as being a hell yes. But what does love have to do with touch? Nothing. Everything. Love can make touch wonderful. It can make it complicated too, because you can love someone deeply and not enjoy the sensation of them touching you. I have. When that happens, your mind tries to convince you that you like something that you don't. Maybe you liked it before. It wasn't always like this. It felt good once upon a time until it didn't. And there you are, their hand on your left breast, and you're remembering all the yeses from before, but right now you're a no. Love in concept is simple, but in practice, not so much. There's so many layers and so much math. Once your body stops responding to the person you love the way it used to, you start calculating. I mean, you add up history, subtract disappointment, divide your attention between how you feel and how you wish you felt, and the math doesn't math. And if you're like me, you might stay anyway. You allow yourself to be touched more often than feels good, more often than is comfortable. You might hope that something will shift eventually, that one day you will climb back into the story your heart is telling. And for the record, penis owners are not exempt. I mean, we think that men don't get touched inappropriately, but they do. You know, when the person reaches for your penis and it rises to the occasion or it doesn't, but you feel the recoil in the pit of your belly, that's data too. You want to lean in so badly because this is the person you promised to spend all your tomorrows with, right? But why does their hand sometimes feel like sandpaper on your skin? Why do you want to turn away when their lips press against yours? There are no simple answers. Maybe it's just the passage of time. Neither of you is who you once were or who you're going to be. Maybe it's just hard to pay attention the way you used to, and also harder to feel tended to in the way you need to. Touch, the thing that used to reel you in, can start to feel like a barrier to entry, a threshold your body doesn't want to cross. And yet, there is still that touch that's like, hell yeah. There's still that, the brush of knuckles along your jaw, slow enough that you can track every little sensation, or the way their thumb pauses at the corner of your mouth, almost like there's a question that's being asked without speaking, lips on a shoulder, like that spot right there, right? I know what that feels like. I mean, I can just talking about it, I can feel my chest tighten, but it's not like panic, right? Your eyes start to sting, the good kind of sting, when the heat blooms in your chest. I mean, there are moments when my partner's hand finds the center of my back and I feel my whole body lean in before my mind has even had a chance to be like, yeah or no. It just like plumes out. There's no negotiation, no math, just an immediate, unapologetic hell yes. The kind of yes that starts behind the sternum and plumes, like I said, like plumes, like through your throat and the nipples, the vulva. Just feels like one quick, swift, fluid motion. Everything above and below agreeing all at once. Hmm. I mean, it doesn't always look that dramatic, of course, but sometimes it's just the way that their fingers feel gliding across your skin. When it feels like their hand is following you instead of holding you. Sometimes it's the weight of her chest against yours, even when you both have clothes on, that you can just feel your heartbeat answering to each other. Sometimes with my partner, it's when his hand is no longer on my skin, that my breath hitches a little bit. I don't even have to say a word, it just happens. And in those moments, I am wanted and home at the same time. And there's nothing to override or justify or brace for. My body isn't trying to like catch up to love or protect me from loving. I'm just in it, just in it. Touch doesn't fix everything, of course. It doesn't erase the memories of hands that take liberties or the seasons where you feel like your own skin is somewhere you visit and not someplace that you live. But touch does tell the truth, right? That's all I've got. If this episode stirred something in you, maybe it made you remember touch that you've been overriding, or maybe it reminded you that there are some hell yeses that you're starving for, right? If so, share it with somebody. Let it be the start of a conversation of how you're touching each other now or how you want to be touched. Because minds and mouths lie all the time, all the time. But skin and bones and tissue and bodies, they don't. Next time, we're going to talk about what happens when you change the way you relate to your body and how that changes the way that you see and want and touch other bodies. Until then, take care. Ciao.